Hi folks, Sandy, and welcome to today's Kendo run. I'm filming out of the car today because I'm on the school run and I'm really pressed for time. So I printed off the questions and let's get straight to them. Okay, so first one, dear Andy, I have a three-pronged question. What is your favourite orjuaza to perform? What do you feel is the most useful in a match, and why do you think that? Okay, cool. Great question, like it. Okay. My favourite orjuaza to perform is probably Men Nukido. Men Nukido, I absolutely love Men Nukido. It's a difficult one to perform and it needs the right sort of setup and semi. But yeah, I think that's my favourite one. Because I don't count Dabano as orjuaza. Okay, so first off. So yeah, Men Nukido. What do I feel is the most useful in a match? Well, Men Nukido is really useful if you've got the right opponent. But for that reason, I wouldn't say it's the most useful. Because it does require the right sort of circumstances. If it's somebody that's very kind of likely to attack men, and is very keen to attack men, then sort of waza like Men Nukido, Men Kaishido are very, very useful. But realistically, and again, it depends on the where you're sort of where you're located. But certainly in Europe, lots of people tend to attack kote quite recklessly. So I feel that like waza like kote kaishimen is a really useful waza for me in a match. So yeah. Why do I think that? Why do I think that it's most useful? Well, for the reason I just said. I think a lot of people do attack kote recklessly. So yeah, kote orjuaza is really useful. I personally think kote kaishimen is the most useful for myself, more so than suriage. I feel like suriage is like a little bit more risk of actually being hit. Though the same could be said for kote kaishimen though, depends on your own technique really. Okay, hello from France, Andy, and sorry for my poor English. It's fantastic, it's much better than my French. Is the cues in the graduation are really used and useful? Because I started Kendo 5 years ago at the age of 21 with a Japanese sensei settled in France who is 7th Dan, and he never spoke about cue. On my third year of practice, I directly went to the Shodan examination. Okay, so no, the cue grades are not like really like critically important, all right? Though they are useful for as a teaching method. The way they're designed in Kendo for mainly for kids. It's mainly just kids that take the cue grades, but here in the West, because we tend to start as adults, it's more of a thing for beginners. And I use it in my club. In the UK, we use the up to second cue. We use those exams to allow our students to get the practice of taking the grading. And then as soon as they're ready to go for the first cue, which is the first one they have to do at a national level, and then their shodan, then we get them straight into doing that. I don't really like the idea of making everybody do each specific cue grade and taking months and months or years and years to do it. I think that has a tendency to kind of hinder progress. But that's my opinion on that really. But in terms of what you've done, where you've kind of gone straight into the sort of first cue and first dan gradings, that's perfectly normal as well. In Japan, that's how most adult beginners would do it. They would start Kendo and then they would go straight away for their first cue and first dan exams, probably within their first year or two of doing Kendo. So yeah, don't worry about it too much. Okay, the next two questions, I'm going to read them out before I answer them because they kind of relate to the same thing. The sun's shining straight through the window, sorry about that. Okay, first one, it says, regarding the Kohai-senpai relationship. So this is something I talked about in my last video, was about the senpai-kohai thing in Kendo. Says, even though it's bigger than just a Kendo thing and not done by Dan or Q grades, In the West, should this be how it's conducted? Someone is a higher grade than you treat them as senpai, or should it be conducted on years of practice? I recently met some players from another town who, as adults, have been playing Kendo 15 years, but have only formally tested for their 5th Q. I treat them as senpai for their experience, even though I'm 3rd Q, but I've been playing for a year and a half. And then the next question also says, hi Andy, many thanks for the latest video on senpai and kohai. It's left me with a question. I've only ever practiced Kendo in the UK, and every time we've had a lineup before and after practice in every dojo I've visited, the order of the lineup is based on grade rather than how long each member has been a member of the dojo. Is this correct? Should we be based on grade or experience? Thanks a lot as always. Okay, so right, that's where it's, you know, that's where it's kind of a difference in culture. That's why it's so different, because in Japan, the sort of senpai kohai thing is such a big thing from a cultural point of view, as well as kind of not just in the Kendo situation. So in the West, when you bring that into the West, where we don't have that in our everyday lives, and of course it gets a little bit muddy, and it's why a lot of dojos, for example, like you mentioned in the UK, just go off the grade, because it's just easier, because we don't have that system outside of the dojo. Whereas let's see if we can put a block on that sun coming through the window. Whereas in Japan, it would be that relationship continues outside of the dojo. So it's the same answer in a way for both questions. It depends on the dojo that you're practicing, first off. If the dojo has a rule that people line up in that specific order, that's one thing. But where you sit in the line and who is your senpai and who is your kohai are two different things, first off, right? Where you sit in the line is where you sit in the line. It's just a position that's kind of, it doesn't really matter. It's just where you sit in the line. Now, you can sit people in order of grade, fine. Does that mean that everybody below you is your kohai and everybody above you is your senpai? No, it doesn't. All right? Okay, so senpai is literally the people that were there before you, and the kohai are literally the people there who are there after you. So even if you are, you know, promoted to a higher grade than them, in my opinion, they're still really your senpai. Okay, so you can't, it isn't a relationship that you can move above somebody else in. In my opinion, I don't go off grade that much. I line people up at my club in their order of their grades, again, just for sake of simplicity. But it's not a case of like, it's not a status thing. It doesn't mean you're better than someone else or something if you sit higher in the line, right? And even though some of the people who are my senpai here in the UK even though I might have the higher grade than them and I might have to sit on a higher area of the line or something, whatever, for me, they're always going to be my senpai, and some of them I'll always consider even my sensei, you know, even if they're people that I passed in terms of grading, because it doesn't really, it doesn't matter where I sit, you know. It's about how I feel towards them, in a lot of ways. But also, well, it's not even about how I feel towards them. That's kind of erroneous to say that, because you can't choose who started Kendo before you or was influential in your club before you. It's the people that came before you, they're your senpai. The people that come after you, they're your kohai. That's literally how that system is supposed to work. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Hi guys, just wanted to hear people's views on drugs in Kendo. Lots of sports, running, cycling, strength sports, suffer from drug use in various forms. Do people think Kendo suffers in the same way as these sports, or does Kendo have something about it that other sports could learn about? Thanks. Okay, so we're talking, I assume you're talking about like substance abuse for performance enhancing and drugs, or you could be referring to like narcotics, I don't know. But right, okay, so first off, Kendo is certainly like the top levels, like the World Championships and what have you, and the International Kendo Federation is governed by the WADA, which is like the International like Performance Enhancing Drugs body. Yeah. I don't know that much about it, but I do know that it is administered by that, and we are held to those standards. If you're participating in international level tournaments, certainly at the World Championships, at the European Championships, I believe it's also involved, and I know for a fact as well at the combat games, the sport called combat games, there is the potential of the drug testing. All right. So I haven't really seen much about it. I've never been tested myself. Never been worried about being tested. Having said that, and at the combat games, they actually, everyone who was awarded a medal or something was everybody actually was mandatory to take the test. But yeah, I don't imagine it's a prolific issue in Kendo, actually. I mean, I certainly don't think it's something that's occurring very much in Japan, because most of the Japanese national team are police officers, and I believe, and I could be mistaken, but I believe that actually routine drugs testing is a kind of routine part of their everyday job as police officers. Not forgetting that the drug laws in Japan are somewhat stricter than many other countries in the world. Not everywhere, but like in Europe certainly. Drugs like marijuana, for example, that carries a prison term. Just possession of marijuana carries a prison term in Japan. I mean, Christ, you can even get in trouble for having a Vicks inhaler stick. The little sticks that are look like a lipstick. You put them on your nose and you got a blocked nose. They're illegal in Japan. So are some antihistamines, stuff like that. That sort of stuff. A lot of it is considered like a narcotic level stuff in Japan, and you can go to jail for it. You can go to prison for it. So they're dead strict on that. So I certainly don't think that it's something that's happening much in Japan. And that's where I've got the most experience, I have to say. I can't speak obviously for other countries. I'd like to think that the top level Kendo athletes aren't involved in any sort of doping or performance enhancing drugs or even recreational drugs. I'd like to think that they're not doing that. I can't say for certain whether anybody is or not, of course. I think for example that any other high profile, there's been a lot of high profile cases, hasn't there, of people getting caught sort of doping or taking performance enhancing drugs, and I'm sure before those cases came out, everybody thought, oh, that wouldn't happen in our sport. So I would like to think that isn't happening in Kendo. I don't know much about performance enhancing drugs and whether they'd be even beneficial to Kendo, but I don't know enough about them to say that they wouldn't, so I couldn't really say that they are no good for Kendo. But I mean, I don't know. But I've never seen it. All right. I've never seen any case of anybody taking banned substances in Kendo in order to improve their performance. So yeah, and like I say, I'd really love to just say, yeah, I don't think it's a problem, but I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think it's not. Let's put it that way. I'd like to think it's not. So yeah, I think that's all I can really say on that. I know that the All Japan Kendo Federation and the International Kendo Federation have done quite a lot to educate people in Japan about banned substances and stuff like that, because there are obviously substances that are like prescribed medication that are actually on the banned list, so you have to make sure that you've got permission to be taking them and stuff like that if you're participating at that level. So there's that sort of side of it as well. Okay, next one. Hi Andy, an off-topic question: Is there in Japan a Kendo championship for the armed force (guntai) personnel? I mean, I've never seen before, so I was wondering if there's a tournament for the armed forces, if there's any public coverage of it. I'd also like to know if there's in Japan All Japan tournament that does not involve the Tokuren. Only average people from dojo or university guys or on a prefectural level. Or only on the prefectural level. Okay, so first off, just a quick correction there. Japan doesn't actually have a guntai. Guntai means army. Japan's constitutionally not allowed to have a guntai. Instead, they have so they don't have an army. There's no Japanese army. But they do have what's called the Jietai, which is their self-defense force, the JSDF. Which is it's like an army, but they're not allowed to. I don't know that much about it, but they're not allowed to kind of invade anywhere or stuff like that. It all goes to sort of after the war, the kind of how the constitution was kind of implemented, you know. But having said that, the Jietai are actually quite into Kendo. There's quite a lot of people that get into the Jietai through Kendo, and there is an All Japan Jietai Championships. It's not very sort of high. How can I say? It's not very. It doesn't have a very high profile. That's it. It's not very well covered. Like, you know, it's not. You know, I guess I don't know why. It's just not very. It doesn't seem to have very much interest attracted to it. But yeah, I mean, they do have it. They definitely do have it. And some of I used to train with some of the guys from the G8 actually, where I used to live, and like they were really, really good. It was, you know, some of them were really, really super good. And then in terms of your question is, I'd like to know if there's an All Japan tournament that does not involve the Tokuren. So the Tokuren is the police Kendo teams. Only average people from the dojo, university guys are on a prefectural level. Okay, so there's no like All Japan championships for non-police officers, as it were, all right? Because they can't really do that, because like the All Japans, it's open to everybody. You just sort of qualify for it. Anybody who's a permanent resident of Japan is able to attempt to qualify for the All Japans. So they can't say, okay, well, everyone can come in this, and then here's another one that everybody except people in this specific job role can't enter. Instead, there's a variety of other tournaments. So like you've got like the All Japan police championships, so you have to be a policeman to be in that, and then you've got the teachers championships, you've got the Jietai championships like I just talked about, and you've got like you've got things like the Kokutai, which is like the national sports meet, or the Todofken, which is the prefectural championships, where each member of the team is like from a different aspect to society. So I think the senpo is a high school student, and then they've got a university student, they've got someone who's a teacher, someone who's a police officer, and then someone who is what's called a shakaijin, which is like a regular person. Like could be the company worker, or it could be, well, basically it's an adult who's not a teacher or a policeman, basically. And then they have like, and that's done by age actually. And then there is another championships called the All Japan Seinen Taikai, which is like it's like the adults tournament, the All Japan Adults Championship, and that is actually it's the nearest thing to what you're talking about. Okay, so that one is, I think there are some restrictions for being in it though. And basically it's basically an All Japan Championships, and there's teams and individuals, but there are restrictions on who can enter, and though I'm not sure if you're not allowed to be a police officer is one, but I'm sure it probably is, because I don't think I've ever seen police officers in it. So police officers aren't allowed in it, but I believe members of the self-defense force are. I don't think teachers are. But there's a rule in that one where you're not allowed to be in it if you have been in specific high-level tournaments. So you're not allowed to enter it if you've been in the All Japan Championships, or if you've been in the World Championships, or if you've been in the All Japan High School Championships, and those sort of high-level tournaments. And I know this because I was actually asked to join the team myself from Kumamoto Prefecture when I was living in Kumamoto, but in the end I actually couldn't join because I've been in the World Championships. So even though there was other people that are much stronger than me, I wasn't able to join because technically I'd been disqualified for that reason. So but it's a bit different. It doesn't work through a qualifying system. You're selected for it by your I guess probably different prefectures do it differently, but in Kumamoto you were selected by the Kumamoto Federation. They kind of handpick the team, but I guess in other prefectures they might have qualifiers and stuff like that. But yeah, that exists, which I guess is a sort of similar one. But again, it doesn't have a super huge following. And then other than that, you do have the prefectural level ones. You've got what's called the Shakaijin Taikai in most prefectures, which is a tournament that's for basically non-police officers and non-Kendo teachers, I think. Like, when I say Kendo teachers, I mean like people who teach Kendo as PE at school, something like that. But they tend to be dominated by people who are in other very like Kendo heavy professions, like prison guards or like people in the Jieitai, the self-defense force, stuff like that. Okay, so that's that. That's all the questions. Just before I go, I've got a few minutes, so I'll finish off with a very quick little rant of my own. This basically comes from my own practice, particularly last night. I think what I really want to encourage everybody to do, right? I think there's not enough realism put into our practice. Okay, now, if you've been following this series, there was a whole thing where we had this big sort of talk about Kendo and sword fighting and realistic stuff like that. And I specifically said that Kendo is not really, for me, about just winning sword fights, which I still don't think it is. However, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a sort of aspect of realism in your waza. All right. So what I'm getting at is I often see that people, when they're practicing their everyday sort of dojo menu, maybe it's like meruchi 4 times or 5 times or kirikaishi, and people kind of fall into a slump and kind of coast through. Yeah, man, this sort of thing. And yeah, they're going through, they're doing everything they've been asked to do. They might even have the really beautiful form, but have they really got the heart in it? And it's really easy to do. I've done it as well, especially when you get tired and you had a hard day at work or something like that. But every single cut that you do in the dojo, if you don't put your heart behind it, you really don't put everything into it. Yeah, seme, man, with good, intention, not just shouting loud, but like you have to have the heart in it. You have to have your mind in it. It has to be real, If you don't do that, then you're kind of wasting your time, You're just kind of going through the motions. So that's something I really want to put across, that you really have to do. And really, I know it sounds obvious, and a lot of these times when I go on about these things, like we talked about kirikaishi and how to teach and stuff like that, and yeah, I know they seem like obvious points, but you've really got to ask yourself, are you really doing this stuff? Are you really doing it? Every time you swing the shinai, right, are you doing your best ippon? Are you really attacking with all of your spirit? Yeah, you really have to have that when you're, even if it's just like the 4 or 5 times big men or something like that. Even if you're doing that sort of practice, you have to put everything in it. Otherwise, you're not going to get out of it what you want to get out of it. You're just going to get yourself tired and you're not going to progress. And that's going to be frustrating, because there's nothing worse than practicing loads and feeling like you're not getting anywhere and then not progressing. And that's a reason a lot of people, I think, fall away from Kendo, because, it is a hard thing, because your sensei can't do it for you. Your teacher can't do it for you. Your dojo mates can't do it for you. You have to do it. It's all on you. You're the only one that has the responsibility and the ability to do it. So you really have to kind of make sure that you're putting everything into each and every single waza that you do, no matter how mundane the actual practice itself is. And again, I know it seems like obvious stuff, but, please just revisit it when you're in the dojo next time and you stood there in your kamae, you're about to do so many times men or even your suburi, just think, I'm going to do this with all of my spirit, all of my energy. Each one is going to be the best ippon, and the next one is going to be even better. Yeah. And if you do that, I guarantee you'll improve. I guarantee it. You can't not. Okay. So that's it. All right. I know it's not a major long one, and I know it seems obvious. I've said that about 3 times, but you know, this is all off the cuff, obviously. So, but you know, do it. Do yourself a favor, and I think you'll be happy about doing so. Okay, so that's enough for me today. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to hear about next time, what you'd like my opinion on, because that's all this is after all. Leave a comment down below. Like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. You know, all the social media, what have you. But most importantly, shop at KendoStar, because that's what keeps me afloat and lets me keep making these videos for you. So yeah, that's KendoStar.com. And it's also brilliant gear. It's the best stuff, best shop on the internet. So go and shop there. KendoStar.com. Okay, brilliant. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.